Save soil world raisers, Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. Sabine and Roger here. Let's watch Lord Ganesha explained by the channel The Legends of History.
Okay guys, so we just watched this video and there's a lot of different depictions and stories and scenarios about Lord Ganesh. So as you're watching this video, if you get triggered by something that you don't agree with, maybe just take a moment and reflect on that, right? Before being just reactive about it. Yeah. So of course there's many tales, many stories, and that's okay, right? So if you do want to point something out that you heard maybe a different way, what you believe is more proper, yeah, please share, kindly.
Kindly. Yeah, and but most importantly, share, what does Ganesh mean to you? How does Ganesh impact your life? Do you have a statue at home? Do you chant the mantra? And yeah, do you understand the meaning? What does it mean to you personally? So
yeah, what does Ganesh mean to you? So let's make it like a tribute of love and joy for Lord Ganesh in the comments section.
Oh, yeah, nice.
Because I think he would much rather appreciate the positivity, right? So yeah.
Thank you.
He's perhaps one of the most revered deities in the Hindu pantheon. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who doesn't recognize the elephant-headed god, Ganesha. But what is it that makes Ganesha such a renowned character that is recognized worldwide? Well, for one, Ganesha is known as the Lord of Good Fortune, and he is said to provide wealth, prosperity in both the mind and the wallet, as well as blessing his devotees with success in their own endeavors. Others recognize Ganesha as the Lord of New Beginnings, whether in relationships, business, or any form of life. He can be seen as the remover of obstacles for those who are struggling, and yet he can also be known as the placer of obstacles, given that he seeks to challenge those who are not growing. He also seeks to challenge those who have done wrong, and takes on a minor role at times as being the destroyer of vanity and pride. Regardless of the other spiritual associations a Hindu may have, many still make time to honor Ganesha, whose image is found virtually everywhere in India and in many places across the globe. His presence, though, also spreads outside of Hinduism, where he is associated with the first chakra, and thus represents survival and the base for all other forms of life. Others see Ganesha not just as the Hindu deity, but also a patron of science and the arts. In the actual Hindu tales, Ganesha, like many of the other gods, have taken on a different role here and there. Several sacred Hindu texts speak about Ganesha quite vividly, and it's easy to see why he is so popular, given that his tales appear to have distinct moral endings. For the most part, Ganesha is said to be the son of Shiva, the destroyer, and his wife Parvati. But there are many different variations of Ganesha's conception, including being created by Shiva alone, being created by Parvati alone, being created by the pair of them through the regular means of conception, or simply by finding him. Ganesha is also commonly associated with being the brother of Kartikeya, otherwise known as Murugan, the god of war. But despite Kartikeya's position as the god of war, his popularity and worship is considerably less than that of his brothers. Ganesha is most commonly seen as having an elephant's head and a large round belly. However, there have been some variations of Ganesha's appearance, including depictions of him simply being a boy, as well as a regular elephant. We commonly see Ganesha with 4 arms, although there exist depictions of Ganesha having as few as 2 arms, and as many as 16. With the more common 4-arm depiction, we see Ganesha holding his own broken tusk, a sweet, an axe, and a noose. In other depictions of Ganesha with more than 4 arms, he can be seen holding a water lily, a mace, a discus, a rosary, a bowl of sweets, musical instruments, spears, and staffs. In these depictions, Ganesha may be seen in a variety of different poses. We may see him in a tantric yoga pose, or standing upright. We may see him dancing, or even crawling in a more childlike form. In other depictions, he is even seated on Parvati's knee. Ganesha may also be seen with his mount, which ironically happens to be a mouse. The use of a mouse is symbolic, given that elephants are known to fear mice, at least from ancient myths that is, and so with this embracing of the mouse as a mount, it shows Ganesha's ability to overcome all obstacles, including fear itself. As I mentioned earlier, there exist many vivid tales of Ganesha, whose stories serve to teach us clear moral lessons. However, Ganesha also has one of the most unique origin stories, which describes how he came to possess the head of an elephant. It's understood from these tales that the goddess Parvati wanted to bathe in privacy, and so she created a boy and assigned him to guard the entrance of her bathroom. But when her husband Shiva returned home and found the boy standing guard, he went to move past him. But Ganesha blocked Shiva's path, denying his entrance as Parvati had instructed him to. Not to be defied though, least of all by a child, Shiva struck off the boy's head with his sword. When Parvati emerged from the bathroom and found the decapitated boy, she was terribly upset. Seeking to undo the damage he'd done, Shiva sent out his warriors to find the first dead creature they could find, which happened to be an elephant. In other versions, it is Shiva himself who dashes out into the wilderness to find the first animal he can find, which turned out to be an elephant as well. In both cases, the head of an elephant was removed and placed on the body of the dead boy. The boy was then brought back to life by Shiva, and thus the boy became the elephant-headed god we all know today. Given that his role was created in this instance to guard Parvati's doorway, Ganesha's depictions are often placed facing doorways to keep out those who are not permitted to enter. There are other famous accounts, though conflicting, including the story of how Ganesha's tusk came to be broken. One popular idea is that Ganesha actually broke it off himself when he couldn't find any writing utensils, so that he could write the Mahabharata, one of the world's longest epic poems. The task at hand was so urgent that his string of thoughts could not be interrupted with the finding of another pen. The sacrifice of his own tusk signifies the sacrifice one may make in creative endeavours in order to complete one's work to the fullest. Another account suggests that the Mahabharata was created by a sage, and that it was he who was telling the tale to Ganesha, who was writing it down. However, when Ganesha's quill snapped, he immediately broke off his own tusk to use instead, as the sage would not stop the story. In another story, Ganesha is asked by Shiva to guard his room as he takes a nap inside. But when a proud warrior named Parashuram came to visit Shiva, he was blocked by Ganesha. Out of frustration of being denied entrance by this weird hybrid elephant boy thing, Parashuram threw his axe at Ganesha's head. Ganesha was able to block the attack, but his tusk took most of the impact, causing it to break off. Another tale speaks of how Ganesha went around all the houses of the land on one of his birthdays to collect sweets and cakes, which he stored in his stomach. However, on the way home, the mouse which was his mount saw a snake and became so startled that it stumbled. This caused Ganesha to be hurled from his seat, and he would cut open his own stomach, causing all the sweets and cakes to burst out onto the floor. Unwilling to leave them behind for everyone to see, Ganesha gathered them all up and stuffed them back into his stomach. He then grabbed hold of the snake that the mouse had seen and used it to tie up his stomach to prevent the sweets from spilling out again. In some versions, the moon happens to see Ganesha fall and comes alive with laughter at the god's expense. Annoyed by this, Ganesha pulls off his tusk and hurls it at the moon, silencing it. Ganesha appears to have quite a few run-ins with the other gods, and his relationships with them seem to see him get the better of them, even against the supreme gods like Vishnu. In one story, Vishnu, who is known to carry a magic conch that he keeps with him at all times, could not find it. He became rattled at not being able to find the conch and organised a massive search for it. But during the search, Lord Vishnu heard the sound of it being played somewhere in the distance. He zoomed off in that direction, only to find Lord Ganesha happily playing with it in the mountains. When Ganesha would not relinquish the conch though, not even to Vishnu himself, Vishnu went to Ganesha's father, Shiva, expecting him to bring his son to order. But Shiva merely sighed and claimed that he had as much power over Ganesha as Vishnu did, and that the only way to reclaim the conch was to pray to him. Reluctantly, Vishnu performed a prayer in honour of Ganesha. Seeing this, Ganesha was both proud and pleased that Vishnu had paid him respects, and so returned his conch to him. In this light, we see Ganesha as quite mischievous, and that he likes to have light-hearted fun at the other gods' expenses, even those who are considered to be much more powerful than him. Shiva's reluctance to get involved directly just goes to show us that even he, the destroyer, cannot deal with Ganesha's mischief. Another example of Ganesha getting the better of the other gods with his sometimes absent or simply impish mindset is when he is invited to a sumptuous ceremony, hosted by the god of wealth, Kubera. Kubera invited many of the other gods and goddesses to join them in what he hoped would be a spectacular evening. However, when Ganesha arrived, he began devouring all the food, to the point that he would leave nothing for the other guests. His hunger though was not satisfied with just the food, so he began consuming Kubera's personal collection of wealth, including the gold itself. Even after this, his hunger wasn't sated, and he even tried to eat Kubera himself. Kubera scolded Ganesha for his behaviour, but he realised his words were falling on deaf ears. So like Vishnu in the previous tale, Kubera went to Shiva in hopes that he'd be able to reprimand his own son. But Shiva simply offered Ganesha a bowl of oats, and it was with this gesture that managed to sate the god's appetite. So stunned by this, Kubera asked why it was that just simple oats were enough to stop Ganesha's rampage. Shiva explained that Ganesha's rampage was born out of Kubera's greed, and that this whole experience was to teach Kubera a lesson that he should not put all his faith and well-being into his possessions, and that he should share more. The moral of this story serves to show us that just because we may have a lot of money, like Kubera, we should be careful not to spend it so frivolously. Ganesha's mischievous sneak has gotten him into a lot of trouble. However, in one story, Ganesha, who was still a child at this point, was playing with a cat. The cat, being a cat, had decided it no longer wished to play, and so strutted off. But Ganesha kept prodding it and pulling its tail, even though the cat meowed and hissed at him. Ganesha failed to notice these signs though, and it wasn't until he got home did he find his mother, Parvati, covered in bruises. Ganesha rushed to her and asked her what had happened, to which Parvati explained that she had taken the form of the cat, and that it was he who had done this to her, even as she hissed at him to stop. It caused Ganesha to realise the unfairness and ruthlessness of his ways, that he had hurt someone he loved because of his own negligence to their feelings. Ganesha would become deeply sorry for his actions, and took an oath that he would treat all animals in future with gentle care and affection. Shiva would certainly revere his own son in a way that is quite unexpected, given that he himself was a supreme god on the same level as Brahma and Vishnu. In another story, we see the relationship between Shiva and Ganesha deepen when Shiva honours Ganesha, stating that whenever someone begins a new venture in life, they would need to worship Ganesha to receive his blessing. This included Shiva himself. So on one occasion, when Shiva was heading out for a war against the demons, he forgot to pray to Ganesha for his blessing. This would lead Shiva and his army to become afflicted with misfortune on their way to the battle, where their war carriage lost a wheel, and the entire army came to a halt. It was during this moment that Shiva realised he'd forgot to get the blessings of his son for this new endeavour, and so he quickly performed a worship ritual in honour of Ganesha. With this, he received Ganesha's blessing, and Shiva and his army were able to defeat the demons. The final story I'll talk about in this video before I get out of here is my favourite story between Ganesha and his brother Kartikeya. One day, their mother Parvati would be granted a special fruit by a sage that would grant he who consumed it a great power. Parvati would attempt to split the fruit in half to share with her sons, but the sage explained that in doing so, the fruit would lose its power. Only if it was consumed by one entity would it grant the eater its powers. Unsure of which son to give the fruit to, Shiva devised a contest where the brothers would have to compete. The winner would be the recipient of the fruit. The contest would consist of circumventing the world 3 times, and whoever did so first would be the winner. Wasting no time, Kartikeya summoned his peacock mount and dashed off to circumvent the world. But Ganesha, being the pot-bellied, stocky being that he was, he knew he could not hope to keep up with Kartikeya. Furthermore, Kartikeya and his peacock mount were far more suited to travelling across the harsh terrain. Ganesha had a mouse for a mount, and didn't have the build to go about running the way Kartikeya could. So he came up with a genius, if not partially manipulative idea. He began to circle his parents 3 times, and when asked what he was doing, Ganesha explained that he was circling his world. So touched by his gesture, Shiva and Parvati gave Ganesha the fruit. It's unknown if Ganesha was actually authentic with his gesture, but given how rascally Ganesha could be, it's safe to assume that he may have been pulling on his parents' heartstrings in order to get what he wanted. Either way, it shows us that while Kartikeya was the brawn in this scenario, Ganesha was the brain, and that in this sense, wisdom triumphs over strength.
Nice. Legends of history. So, what did we learn? I learned that we try to watch about 10 different Ganesh videos explained, and each video, even videos from Indians, are very different, and the stories are very, very different, and the explanations and the symbols. And so personally, I just love watching the pictures and, you know, take out whatever resonates for me, because we literally don't know what is actually true, what happened really and what not, what is, yeah.
A lot of different stories. And even in this, there's variations of, you know, different stories. There's like 3 different stories of even how he was created.
Yeah.
You know, Parvati alone or Shiva alone or both of them together. So many different stories and variations. And even Satguru is talking about it, that it's actually not an elephant's head, it's a Ganas, right? So that's where Ganapati comes from. So we don't know like what is the truth, but I think the meaning and the message is that Ganesha is incredibly revered and very special, sacred and divine to tons of people all over the world, right? Including us. We love Ganesh, right? We know the mantra and we chant it, and we know about the remover of obstacles. So, we've chanted his mantra many times.
He also said, which I thought was very interesting, and we don't have to fight about it if it's true or not. But he said, you know, he's also placing obstacles, which we actually experienced yesterday when we tried to find Ganesh videos to watch, and it was so incredibly difficult. We never experienced anything like that. It's like, whoa. So it was like, it was so intense that
he was like placing obstacles.
Yeah,
right?
It was so obvious, and now that just confirms it. If it's true or not, it doesn't matter. But it just makes sense. For everybody has a different experience with different deities, and that really helped me understand what we went through yesterday. Patiently, by the way, we were extremely patient, which surprised us.
So we got to the bottom of things in our hunt, and we included this video because it's just about the most viewed video on Ganesh on YouTube. So I was interesting to see that there's actually not that many really popular videos on Lord Ganesh. So we need more videos. Maybe we can pray to Ganesh to have some wonderful content creators, dive in and make more beautiful videos about him. So, but anyways, this one was great. And then just showing all the different variations of the stories. And I recognized quite a bit from the Bal Ganesh. And then, different depictions of those tales. Like with the tusk, there was like four different stories of how the tusk broke, right? And then one of them was with, the moon god was part of that story. But in Bal Ganesh, no, it wasn't about the tusk. But in Bal Ganesh, it was about blocking the path. One sage wanted to go see Shiva and then got into a fight, got angry, and then that's how it was depicted in Bal Ganesh, but different variations, right? So anyways, is what it is, right? Yeah, so it was great. So just learning more and more about Ganesh, and I think that's all we could do is just find the information that's out there and understand a little bit more. But the meaning and the essence of Ganesh is that, incredible, God. And then, we can worship and pray to Ganesh to remove the obstacles, and to have him be a part of our lives, right? So great.
Yeah, so let us know if you have a statue of Ganesh at home, and maybe what's your favorite depiction, or what does Ganesh mean to you?
Yeah, we got several statues of Lord Ganesh. We should have brought one.
3, 4, I remember.
Yeah,
I
think 4. So thank you so much for joining us for this video. Please hit that like button if you liked it as much as we did. Remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Let us know what you think down in the comments. And remember, raise yourself.
And raise the world and save the soil. Thank you so much, everyone. And a very special thank you to all our members. We love you.
Peace.